welcome to Game Night at the Shelby County Reporter. We're in week 9 of the season. Davis Potter, sports intern, Wesley Hallman, sports editor, here with you. First, we're going to take a look at last week's game of the week. We saw Spain Park hosting Pelham. Jaguars picked up a big win over the Panthers and clinched a playoff berth in the process. What was your take on that game, Davis?
Yeah, it was the first chance for the Jaguars to clinch that playoff spot with the Panthers sitting there one game behind them in the region standing. So there was a lot riding on this game. Locked up their playoff spot, and it sets up a big game next week where they could possibly, with a win, get that 3 spot in the region. And you have to give a lot of credit to Coach Bergeson and that coaching staff, the way they've been able to keep this thing together. The whole David Shores drama and all that turmoil off the field. And starting this season with 2 straight losses after getting dominated by Auburn in the preseason jamboree. Now they've won 4 of their last 6 region games, and that includes the upset of the number 2 ranked state at the time, which was Vestavia Hills a couple weeks ago. This team could have, spun. It could have been a downward spiral after losing a couple games. They give Coach Bergeson a lot of credit for keeping this thing together, and now this team's playing with a lot of confidence going into the playoffs.
It certainly was a big win, Davis. Like you mentioned, you look back at where they started the season, really tough. 3 weeks in a row, didn't score a touchdown until the 4th week of the season. They've come a long way, back-to-back wins over Vestavia Hills and Pelham. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep up that momentum in the playoffs, playing Class 6A Region 6 teams week in and week out. That's the best preparation for a playoff run. Spain Park could be a surprise team in the Class 6A playoffs. In other big games this week, Davis, we've got Briarwood Christian playing host to Sylacauga. The Lions picked up a big 41-18 win over Shelby County last week. They're inching closer to a region championship. If they can pick up a win this week, they can seal it. We also saw Chelsea pick up a big win last week against Talladega. They put themselves in position to, just in case Briarwood loses, they're still right there for possible region championship with a tie-breaking scenarios. What's your take on their games last week and looking ahead this week, Davis?
Yeah, Briarwood, they got off to a rough start there. Shelby County scored the first 18 points of the game, took the 18-0 lead, and the Briarwood comes back and scores the next 41 points of the game, and really in dominating fashion there. And so the Lions control their own destiny to a region title. If all they have to do is beat Sylacauga next week, that's it. No more questions asked. But if they fall to Sylacauga and Chelsea's able to win, that sets up all kind of tiebreaker scenarios. So I'm sure they don't want that. They just want to go out and handle business. Chelsea, on the other hand, playing with a lot of momentum. After knocking off Talladega last week, Jake Gannett, this was really a one-man show, accounting for more than 400 yards of offense, 255 rushing, more than 160 passing, had 4 or 5 touchdowns in that game. Really was, just really a wrecking ball for, and Talladega really had no answer for them. They have a lot of, confidence and momentum going forward, and it just sets up all kind of scenarios next week, like we talked about, so both of these teams, it's going to be a fight down to the end, really, and hopefully they can both keep their momentum going and really have a lot of confidence going into the playoffs next week.
And you also mentioned you throw with Shelby County into that mix. They've got playoff implications this week. They take on Pinson Valley. The winner of that game is in. The loser is out. They're head-to-head for that tiebreaker in the 4th spot, and it'll come down to the head-to-head meeting Friday night between the 2 teams. So we've got a possibility of Briarwood, Chelsea, and Shelby County, all 3 of our teams in Class 5A Region 5, making it to the playoffs this season. In our game of the week this week, we've got Spain Park traveling to Thompson to close out Region 6 play. As we mentioned earlier, the Jaguars clinched the playoff spot by defeating Vestavia Hills and Pelham in back-to-back weeks. This week, they're going to just be looking to continue that momentum they've had the last couple of weeks. Can they do it, Davis?
Yeah, I think they can. They're going into a game against Thompson, this Thompson team that's just kind of reeling right now. They only have 1 win on the season. That was against Carver, earlier in the season. They don't even have any region wins. And, I think, the Jaguars, like you said, just kind of want to keep it going. They, last week was their first chance to wrap up a playoff spot there in the region. They did that, defeating Pelham. Now, they could, with their upset win over Vestavia a couple weeks ago, could, possibly get that number 3 seed in the region. So I think, the Jaguars, I don't think they'll have a whole lot of problems, against the Warriors on Friday, but, that's why they play the games on the field, not on paper. I think Spain Park can kind of tested that this year. They've kind of been in that role where they were the underdog, where they, coming out in the beginning of the season, losing a couple straight games. Now, as we've mentioned, they've gotten that ship righted definitely, with 4 out of their last 6 wins in region play. Riding that momentum into the playoffs. So, like I said, I think they'll be able to handle the Warriors comfortably. But again, that's why they play the games.
Looking back at the beginning of the season, Spain Park had a rough start, lost their first 3 games, didn't score a touchdown their first 3 weeks of the season. Meanwhile, Thompson started off pretty strong. They carried Stanhope Elmore into overtime. They played a close game with Homewood right off the bat in Region 6 play. If you look back at the beginning of the season, this game would probably have been, it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
It definitely would have been an important region game. And now looking at it, Spain Park's coming in, having sealed that playoff spot. Thompson, they're just, they've struggled in Region 6 play this year. They're just looking to close the region play with 1 win at least.
Yeah.
They'll have a lot of pride, the Warriors will, and, they'll give Spain Park their best shot. But back where we started this season, we certainly didn't see Spain Park as a playoff team after the first couple weeks of the season. The Jaguars deserve a lot of credit this season with all the off-the-field drama, as you mentioned earlier. They've really put that behind them in the past. Picked up a lot of big wins, like you said, that upset over Vestavia Hills. They will be a team to contend for at least a couple of playoff wins in the Class 6A playoffs. Check back next week to see how this week's biggest games turned out. I'm Wesley Hallman.
And I'm Davis Potter.
And this has been Game Night at the Shelby County Reporter.